Mm,
Probably to both of you, you made this other. It's half the glory is ours, and half of the glory is Jessica's. Yes, it is. And in June, it's half. Yes. For you. I went to Ace yesterday. I did not see you. You went to Ace Hardware? Ace or Harbor Freight? Yeah. And you did, she went yesterday and she did not see you, Tom. Right there. You must be set up things around the house. You got hands? Yeah. Oh yeah. That was great. Yeah. You.
good, good. Pretty good.
Your family.
So when you asked me about Blanchard last week, I was thinking about I was watching my daughter's dogs in Blanchard last week. So that's why you probably got a weird reaction. The week because I didn't know you knew, but the week before, my wife, I guess, I told you that we were gonna go look at a house.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's what.
Yeah. Well, they ended up the realtor and us got out there, and the people had not opened their little latch thing, and we saw them leave, and then they said, "Oh, we're halfway to Ada. We can't turn around and unlatch it." So we never, yeah, we didn't get to see it. We kind of gave up on that one because that was like the third time.
Oh yeah.
Wanna,
Maybe they didn't want it.
they don't really want to sell it, you know.
Yeah. So you were watching
Yeah, she's got three big dogs, and she didn't like to kennel them. So if we can, so if I'm available, then I go over there and watch her. Yeah, usually just
Yeah.
stay there and hang out there.
So they need feeding and water. Like that. Still need care.
She just went home yesterday, so yeah, it's good.
Some sort of a UTI or something.
Yeah,
Confusion.
yeah, it made her really. We're hoping that was. We think it was the medicine that was causing the confusion,
Yeah.
but we're not 100% sure. So yeah, I'm glad she came back with the right mind, so we could let her.
She live at home with you guys?
She lives at her own home, but I think she may be moving with us. So we're gonna. Right now, Laura's just staying over there 24,
Yeah.
24/7. Have our kids come over and give her a break. So,
Yeah. That's good.
yeah.
That's good. There must come a time when you're safe
Yeah,
situation.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Oh, oh.
oh, yeah.
No. I just didn't want you to throw.
Remember.
Oh, yeah. When you get time, or right. I know the church has its own speaker. I don't think if you want to get I don't know if you can order it or not. You don't have to.
I don't mind if you need me to, I will.
I mean,
Except
it's just a little
it's
easier.
upside down. This turn.
Oh yeah, that's your turn. Yeah, just turn it. We'll turn it the other way now. Well, how does it turn? Oh, it just comes off, evidently. There you go. Yeah, I mean, most of the time you're right behind right behind.
Right.
Big deal. Some of them like that time when we were fighting, You guys try to
Turn, yeah.
try to turn while you're reading. A little bit hard to get your sound. But yeah, if you don't mind wearing the headphones.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't. I'm not one to comment on anything. Several times yeah, I don't either because I don't want it. I do have very specific political views. No, not unless you want to remember what I say. Yeah. No, there's one or two that might, but not generally. Nobody takes notes. Now, if I was, I've taught this course out at the university, so they all took notes. Well, it's Introduction to the Bible, and I've been going through the Old Testament. I'm at the end of the Old Testament now, and we'll begin some on the New Testament either next or the next in 2 weeks. I've got something else I want to kind of hit on, so I probably won't get very much of my what I'm supposed to do in lesson 20. Um, anyway, this is a course I taught when I was teaching out at Oklahoma Christian. I did this intro to the Bible for I think 13 or 14 years. I don't. The older I get, the less I remember. But what? What? No, yeah, my whole life I wish I was talking to Becky about the benefits she had growing up as a Christian compared to me not growing up as a Christian, where first 21 years of my life was wasted. So not being a Christian. Well, I think it was. I can. God uses it. God uses it, but I think about all the vanity and stuff I was involved in, drugs, and alcohol, and everything else. So, that's right. That's right. Something came up at the end of class last time that I thought I want to hit on a little bit again. it dawned on me that we don't have a real good, or members of the church or of Christianity don't have a real good understanding of. And that is the history of the church. And so I kind of want to hit on that in case you don't have a good idea, or maybe you do, but you can hear it again. It won't hurt you. The church, and I guess I can just do it right over here on this whiteboard over here. That those of you back here better kind of turn around. So let me pull this over. Clang, clang, clanger. Uh, from about 27 AD to about 80 AD, you've got the first church. I hate that word. Uh, church is a terrible translation. The word just means assembly. Well, but if I do that, or I think even a better word is congregation. What's the difference between church, assembly, and congregation?
Congregation.
And it's used in the New Testament that way. When Paul went to Ephesus, uh, the people got in an uproar and they gathered in the big stadium where you and I have been, big theater. Uh, one of the magistrates comes out and says, "You've got to break this up in case we're charged with having an unlawful assembly." And it's the same word that's translated church. So it's used. It's just a general word in Greek, assembly. Okay. So you've got the first church and the teachings of the apostles, and that's what we have in the New Testament. Okay. Any questions about this so far? So the Church of Christ is desiring to go back to. It started in the 1700s. It didn't start in the 1700s, but the notion of restoration started in the 1700s, primarily with Thomas and Alexander Campbell. And the idea was to go back to just the teachings of the New Testament as the first church did. Then from about, then the Gentiles came in. Before that, the church was Jewish. And in Acts chapter 15, there's a debate in the council in Jerusalem about whether the Gentiles can come in. Did y'all understand what I just said? Now the question is, can the Jews come in? Isn't that right? I mean, the very first church was Jewish. Jesus was a Jew. He is a Jew. I say was. He is a Jew since he's still alive. And the church viewed itself as being Jewish. And so the idea of bringing Gentiles that weren't converted to Judaism, that's the reason in Galatians they had a group going out from Jerusalem teaching that the Gentiles had to become Jews. They had to be circumcised to become Jews. The restoration. There's a difference between Reformation and Restoration, and that's the Restoration was in the early 1700s, about mid 1700s. So, but uh, the book of Galatians was written. Paul was writing to Galatia because a group of Judaizers went into Galatia and said, in order for you to be Christians, because they're turning Gentiles, in order for you to be Christians, you've got to become Jews. Why would they do that? Because Christianity is still a Jewish religion. And it still is today. It's hard to comprehend. But you have Judaism, Moses, the law, temple, priests, and it was only for Jews. But God called Abraham. Abraham is the source of all this. He calls Abraham and says, through your seed, all the nations of the earth are blessed. So then Abraham has Isaac, and God makes the promise to Isaac. Through your seed, all the nations shall be blessed. Isaac has Jacob. God makes the promise to Jacob. Through your seed, all the nations of the earth are blessed. Jacob's name is changed to Israel. So, did that happen? Did God keep his promise? How did he keep his promise? Right. This is what we're talking about here. Abraham, God makes the seed promise to him along with the land and nation promise. Through your descendants, through your seed, the one he identifies as Jacob Israel. And then God renews the promise through Judah. Okay. So this is Israel. The salvation to the Gentiles, non-Jews, is going to come through Israel. Okay. Law, temple. That's what Moses brought, was law, temple, priests. And so, but if it was for Jews only, if Judaism was for Jews only, then it can't bless the rest of the world unless the rest of the world becomes Jews. And that's what the problem in the book of Galatians was, is that the first Christians, you have Jesus, apostles, and the New Testament, which promotes grace. So up to this point, everybody, right after, at the resurrection of Jesus and on the day of Pentecost, everyone that's a Christian is what? Jewish. Did they stop being Jewish? That's a big issue. That's a big point. Christianity is not a whole different religion. Christianity is the fulfillment of Judaism. It's like a plant, and the plant is Judaism, which produces Christianity. Well, is Christianity part of Judaism? Is the flower part of the plant? Is it different from the plant? Right. And the plant produced the flower. Without the plant, the flower cannot be produced. And the plant produced the flower, and so it's an, as you said, an integral part of the plant itself. Yeah. So Christianity is Judaism full grown. I know I don't write very well with this little marker. So it's yes, mark. So that's what's really important. This is the flower. This is the plant. Well, no, the seed goes back to Abraham. The coming seed that God promised is Jesus. But Abraham was the beginning. Okay, and so uh, Abraham was, like I said, the beginning, and it begins to unfold, and God is showing how He's going to fulfill His promise to save the Gentiles. God's goal is, I shouldn't do it that way. I should say, God's goal is to save the world. God's goal is to bless all mankind, is to save the world. So some of them weren't. We've got to be careful here because uh, when we read in the book of Acts, you come to Acts, I think it's 20 or 19 or 20, it's in there somewhere. Uh, Paul goes to Jerusalem and meets with the leaders of the church in Jerusalem. And they say, Paul, and he reports to them all that God has done among the Gentiles. And they all rejoice. And they say, now, Brother Saul, it's been told that you're forsaking Judaism. And in order to show that you're not, we have some men who are taking a vow. We want you to pay for the sacrifices. So, did Paul forsake Judaism? No, that's what it says. Let's look at it real quick because it's an important text. It's Acts. I'm going to say Acts 20. It might be. Where is it? Chapter 21, verse 17. And when he had come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. And it says us because Luke is writing this, and he was with Paul when they came to Jerusalem. And now the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. That's James, the brother of Jesus. And after he had greeted them, he began relating one by one the things which God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. When they heard it, they began glorifying God. And they said to him, you see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed and are all zealous for the law. Now, that word thousands, what do you have a margin note on that? What it literally is in the Greek? Verse 20 of 21. 21:20. Do you have a margin note on that number? Thousands? Well, I do. And I checked it in the Greek. It's literally tens of thousands. So there are tens of thousands of believers in Jesus who are Christians, and it says they're still zealous for what? For the law. Well, is that okay? Was that okay for them to be zealous for the law? Yeah, yeah. Then and he says, and they have been told about you that you are teaching all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children nor to walk according to the customs. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. So was Paul teaching the Jews to forsake the law? He wasn't. So what was he telling the Jews? You see, this is where I think uh, Western Christianity has gotten so far off base. Is that we would argue that what I hear when I listen to most preachers from the Catholic Church up is that God forsook the Jews and created a new religion, and that's not true. Um, the religion, the religion that God had with Abraham, was that different than the religion he started under Moses? Not really. What Moses was a growing up of what God taught. It's progressive. Yeah, God's end goal is the salvation of the world, all the nations. Well, how's he going to do that? Well, he's going to create. God is in a where God is in a pickle. Now, uh, God is in a situation to where the whole world has started worshiping false gods, spirits, spirit beings who are not God, and the whole world has started worshiping. So God, if He's going to bring salvation to the world, He's got to create a people who don't do that and who are dedicated solely to Him. So He chooses Abraham because of Abraham's faith in Him. And then Abraham dedicates himself to the one true God. He has Isaac and he teaches him, and Isaac has Jacob and he teaches him, and God selects these people because not because they're special, but because he has to have a bloodline through whom the salvation of the world will come. The prophets try to tell them that. And the problem with the Jews, some of the Jews, how many Jews became followers of Jesus in Jerusalem by Acts 20? Tens of thousands. So the leadership didn't like that. And so they're the ones that crucified Jesus. They didn't like the idea. It would convict them of wrongdoing. And so they remained Mosaic Jews, and they were the plant rejecting the flower. See, that's the thing. The Jews, God began promising through the prophets that he was going to send a Messiah, which means Christ. What does that word mean? Messiah is Hebrew, Mashiach, Christ in Greek, Christos. What does that word mean? What does it mean in Greek, Becky? Okay. Theo in Greek means to anoint. You pour anointing over somebody's head. That means, in Greek, I would say, I chrio you. And so that would then make you a Christos, or in your case, a Christi, feminine, which means you've been anointed. And so the prophets began saying that God is going to send his anointed who will deliver the world, who will deliver the Jews and save the world.
Okay, so what was the chance Jewish people nowadays that don't
They believe the Messiah is still yet to come. And they they believe that when the Messiah comes, because the prophets portray Israel ruling the world. If you go to Isaiah, the different prophets, they'll talk about when the Messiah comes, he will sit down on his throne and rule the world.
physically?
Physically rule the world, and so having a crucified Messiah didn't fit their idea. You follow me? Yeah, and we've made, I don't know if we've understood that correctly. I don't understand what all that means. We talk about the deity of Jesus. I don't know what that means. The Bible talks about things like that, but the Bible could be Jesus. Was Jesus born of a virgin? How was she impregnated? By the Holy Spirit. So in that sense, he is related both to Mary, human, but also to God. I don't understand what that means, because what he does primarily as a human. His Even the miracles he works says that it was done by the power of the Holy Spirit, not by him. So anyway, people want to debate that issue. We Western Christians adopted that view wholeheartedly when it still needs to be debated a bit. I'm not denying the deity of Jesus. I'm just saying if we claim we understand that, then we're fools. It was certainly a miracle. Virgins don't have babies, but how was Jesus the Son of God in a different way than you're a son of God? And so that's what's got to be thrashed out a bit. What's important is the fulfillment of this promise that a human through Eve is going to bring salvation to the whole world. It's not that God is going to walk into the earth and save all humans, it's a human that's going to do it. Now, is Jesus the Son of God? Yes. What does that mean? I don't have a clue. I know that's blasphemy. If I said this in a preacher's luncheon, I'd probably get crucified. But I'm just, to be honest with you, when I try to thrash it out, it's more than my little brain can handle. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, but the question is, have we understood it correctly? And I don't know. We don't have to. If we did have to, it would be more plain. Yeah,
That's not just
right, right. Knowledge, intelligence is not right, 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 right. No, I mean, think, Paul, as great as he was, didn't have a cell phone. So, you know. All right. So, you have you got this? And so the first church was made up of what kind of people? Jews. Was Christianity Jewish? If it wasn't Jewish, they couldn't. Acts 21 could not be written where Paul goes in and they said, well, we've got tens of thousands of believers who are zealous for Judaism. And in order to show that you're not teaching Jews to forsake Judaism, we've got some guys over here that's going into the temple, and we want you to offer their sacrifice. And so Paul goes into the temple as a Christian to pay for the sacrifices of these guys who are keeping a vow. I heard a preacher here in Oklahoma City. I went to his class. He was on this. He said that they were mistaken, that they were in error when they did that. And I said, really? You think the apostles and James and Paul were all in error, and you're right? You're right, and they're wrong. That went over like a pole vaulter. I was. And I was as popular as a pig in a synagogue at that point. So, huh?
thinking to separate things in the mind of this and two
Right, right. And Western Christianity has come to that point, and it's a shame because I think we could still be converting Jews by the thousands if if we understood it and presented it. Now, let's talk about what happened. Have we got all this? All right. Well, all right. Let's do it. Joe Shulam is a believing Jew in Jerusalem. Went to the Hebrew University, converted at like 16, and is leading the church in Jerusalem. He's a little older than I am, so he's an old, crotchety old guy. So, but I had him here in the States to speak. Oh, he's got a face. Okay. Joseph Shulam.
one of the challenging. But Western Christians are and Judaism all so all
The difference is they're Jews and you're not.
Okay.
They're physical Jews. You're a Gentile. And Gentiles, and that's what the council in Jerusalem decided is in Acts 15 is that the Gentiles don't have to keep the law.
Okay.
And technically the Jews didn't have to keep the law either, but they did out of tradition, and that's okay. That's okay to do it as long as you don't view it as a matter of salvation. They're They're a covenant requirement. A requirement. Yeah. It's like our celebration of Thanksgiving or Christmas. We celebrate Christmas. Now, the churches of Christ have argued so strongly against doing that that a lot of churches won't even let you use the word Christmas or Easter. It's a religious holiday. Uh, I had a whole group of men at Northwest because I mentioned Easter from the pulpit. This was my first 5 years there, and they came in storming in. They were upset and they said, "You are talking about something unbiblical. It's not in the Bible." What they didn't know, it is in King James translation. There's one place in the Book of Acts where they use the word Easter. So I said, "Yeah, it is." They said, "No, it's not where." And I told them, and they looked at that, and they all went there, and it was funny. They, that old experience. They go, I mean, they couldn't believe Easter was in the Bible. But the point is, we celebrate Easter as a tradition. I don't view it as a religious holiday. Now, I'm glad the whole world thinks about the resurrection of my Lord on that day, and I will use that to be able to open conversation about it. I don't believe that's the day Jesus was raised, and I don't celebrate it on that day because I celebrate it every Sunday. You follow me? And so, right, right, and I don't believe Christians are lost if they hide Easter eggs on Sunday. I really don't. Or if they have, I had a guy one time, we were in a class and I was talking something similar to this, and he says, "You can't celebrate Christmas as a Christian." And I said, "I've been to your house, you got a tree growing in the middle of your living room." And I shut that down. So the Jews had a habit. They grew up from childhood going to the temple, 4 or 5 times a year. That's how they celebrated their holidays. That's their tradition. They came together. It wasn't just about ceremony. They would go offer these, all right, we're going to get together and we're going to go eat some lamb together, some roast lamb. Everybody want to go? All right, let's go to the temple. We'll go in. I'll take this lamb. I got this. We're going to take him to the temple. We're going to give it to the priest. He's going to dedicate it to God. The priests are going to butcher it. They're going to put it on the fryer, on the spit, and they're going to burn up the entrails and things and give us the meat. And we're going to go into one of these rooms here in the temple, a banquet room, and we're going to sit down and eat a big lamb celebrated dinner. See, that's what worship at the temple was about. Are y'all following me? We get it wrong. We get we're so unfamiliar with Judaism, we don't know what they did. But but we don't think about right. We just view that aspect of it. We don't realize that they ate that meat. There's only one sacrifice out of all they offered that the whole thing is called a whole burnt offering. But the rest of them they ate. And they had banquet rooms, dozens of banquet rooms in the temple area. If you couldn't afford the banquet room, then you'd take the meat home and you'd have a house and everybody would come together and like we had hamburgers out here the other day, you know? That's what it was. That's what it was. So how do you break that habit? That's a family thing. That's a family thing. What if I came in and says you can no longer celebrate the 4th of July and you can no longer grill hamburgers on the 4th of July or whatever you do from now on because you've changed religion? That wouldn't go over well. Right. And it never did. Did you hear what I just said? Well, I think it's human nature to want to have rules to know whether you're in or out. And the New Testament really teaches when Paul went out and said, Okay, rules are for children. Do children need rules? And so you teach children, look, don't jump on the bed. Don't jump on the couch. Don't don't mark on the walls. Right. Right. Yeah, as soon as you walk out the door, they're over on the couch jumping up and down, you know. Why? They didn't need they didn't need that. So why were they doing it? It's human nature. And that's why God eliminated the law, because it's our nature that if we're told we can't do it, we want to do it. Now, I didn't notice Wade marking on the wall. We didn't keep pencils away from him because he'd mark on the walls. Why? Why did you not mark on the walls? No, you didn't. You didn't mark on the walls. Why didn't you? Without anybody telling you not to, why didn't you mark on the walls? Nobody told you not to. See, he's mature. He grew up. He's no longer 7 years old. Listen, he's no longer 7 years old. He grew up. And so the Paul talks about how we grew up and that law was put there for children, children in the faith, children that didn't know right from wrong. The reason we have rules for kids is they don't know right from wrong. So we're teaching them right from wrong. They have a hard time adjusting to it, but they eventually do. And then when they grow up, they no longer want to do the wrong. And so that's the way the law functioned, was for spiritual children. Do this, don't do that. And so now that we grow up, we don't have law. We don't have the law. You can do, this is a hard one. As a Christian in Christ, you can do whatever you want to do. No, there's not. All things are lawful or profitable. So it's lawful for you to mark on the walls. If you came in and started marking on the walls, we'd be upset, but we're not going to whip you. But you don't want to do it. It's not profitable. You don't view it as something you want to do because it has no benefit. So all things are lawful for you. Anger, cursing, fornication, stealing, jealousy. It's all lawful, but you should be in Christ. Your maturity level has come to where you don't want to do those things. Well, the best thing to do about the Ten Commandments is to get them out of the way. And that's what Colossians says, that the law was nailed to the cross. It was done away with. That's right. That's right. But the point I'm trying to make is, and it's hard, it's a hard concept, but you guys brought it up. So if if we didn't have the law and the Ten Commandments, then we wouldn't know what was right and wrong. So once we learn, and that's what rules are for your children. Now, Colossians and Galatians talks about growing up. That the law was for children, spiritual children, so that humans in their infancy, not physical infancy, but in our infancy as humans, we learn what's right and wrong. The rest of the world who didn't have the law were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, that for their religion, they would take a sacrifice to the temple, give it to one of the priests, and then have sex with the priestess and pay her, and she would take the money. She was a prostitute, and take the money and dedicate half of it to the temple. And that was their religion. That was their religious practice. And they lied and stole, and how many of you have read the Iliad by Homer? In there, the gods, it'll have a scene where the guys are fighting on the battlefield, and then the next scene is of the gods talking and arguing in Olympus, and the gods are lying and cheating and killing. So that's where humans go. That's where we go without revelation from the true God. So God took a group of people out of that and said, all right, let me show you what the truth is. Don't lie, don't steal, don't fornicate, don't commit adultery, etc. Don't have other gods. And so we learn the truth just like a child learns in his home. Well, we grow up, but we do know what's right and wrong. And what God wants you to do as an adult is your want to. Now, I have argued for a number of years now that we're going to be judged on our want tos. God is going to judge us based on our want tos and not on our practice, because we don't always do what we want to do. So if your want tos are in the right place, which as Christians we learn what we ought to do, and so I want to do what I ought to do. Now, I don't always do that. I get angry. I curse sometimes. I'm driving. It happens when I drive. Devil's wheel. I mean, it's very seldom, but it happens. Your preacher occasionally gets so angry that he'll curse. And that's because I've got that background. And so the curse of my life. So blame it on that. But anyway, blame it on the devil. So what's my point? My point is that we no longer are bound by law. You can do whatever you want to do. Now, if your want tos are to serve God and to please Him, when you fail, He forgives you because you're in covenant. Jesus established a covenant with His blood that promises God will forgive you of your sins, period, of your violations of what the want tos ought to be. If you're not fishing, your want tos are totally somewhere else. And you're not under covenant. So when you maybe you have good want tos. I've met non-Christians who have good morals, but they don't live up to them either. And so when they fail to keep the morals that they should, they're judged for it. When if you've been baptized, I think everybody in this room has, you're under covenant with God, then you want to do what's good, but you fail as a human being, then you've got forgiveness. You're forgiven. God has made a covenant. And a covenant is a sacred oath, and God's not going to break his oath. So a lot of times we live under, especially church people, because the preaching has been so screwed up, we live under a sense of condemnation that we're not happy. Oh, I believe in Jesus, you know. We're not happy people. Well, my problem, and I'm an old man, I can't do it successfully, but I don't think I'm an old man. Like I'll be out on the golf course and somebody almost hits me with a golf ball, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna knock this guy's lights out. and I'm serious. I'm thinking, and I picture myself when he walks up there going, "Ow," and knocking his lights out. Well, that's not Christian. That's not Christian. But my want to is to be better. And so because I think that it's a sin, but God forgives it. It's forgiven. Are y'all getting this? This is a major paradigm shift. It's a major shift in how you think. And I want you to get it. We didn't get through the lesson I wanted to do, but I think this is a worthwhile thing that we've got to talk about. Really, I want you to think, I want you to,
The right and wrong instead of worshiping God.
yeah.
And like the law will never get you to heaven.
That
Uh, well, the will of God is for us to want Him, to love Him with all of our heart, and soul, and mind. And so, if we love Him, and who said that? I mean, who? If we love Him like David loved Him, what happens when we kill somebody? What happens when we commit adultery? Because we honor and love our God, we realize we did wrong and we feel bad about it, but He forgives you. And forgiveness, and Paul has to talk about this because he understands the consequence of telling people you're not under law. He says, don't use your freedom as an excuse to sin. Why would he say that? Because we're not condemned when we sin. We're not condemned. You're not condemned when you sin. But Paul says, don't just go out and do it because you're not condemned. I know this is the hardest lesson for Western Christians that I know.
What God says. I know 25 years ago, we had questioned on a lot of things. I grew up in the churches of Christ. That was a hard one to get through, to separate our tradition, and every church of faith was going to have a tradition to separate.
Yeah, let me encourage you. I had a guy, the smartest man I know, Jim McGuigan, said to me one time, we were talking about tradition and stuff. He says, read through the New Testament, mark all the times where Paul makes a law or a rule, and compare that to the things that you think are rules. And because some guy was arguing that something was a sin, I'm not going to tell you what. And Jim says, well, I'm hesitant to call something a sin that the Bible doesn't specifically call a sin. Now, how many things do you think are sin that the Bible doesn't say is a sin?